Welcome back to another edition of Flight Tying for Beginners with Jim Misiura. Today we're going to tie another nymph, and this is going to be a Prince nymph. Prince is a very good nymph. It's been around a long time because it works. I really like the goose biots off the back. Like they look like budding wings. It's really nice feature to them. I had those budding wings to a lot of different flies, and it works well. Our materials we're going to need white goose biot. We're going to need brown goose biot, and we're going to need peacock herl. We're going to need a brown hackle, and we're going to need some silver tinsel, gold and silver tinsel. Nowadays they usually come in two colors on one. I haven't seen any in a long time that have just one color of the tinsel. Now the goose biot, if you don't know, the goose biots come from the leading edge of the flight feather of a goose, or it could be a duck biot or whatever, but it comes from the leading edge of the flight feather. And here, this is a snow goose, and you can see here, this is the biot. Alright, so if you hunt goose, or you know anyone that hunts goose and they could get you some feathers, you got the quill side and you got the biot side. And as you get further down in the wing, there is less quill on the lower ones. The ones that are way down lower next to the body, they're not going to have that air cutting biot on there. So, and then here is a good example. You can see this came right off. You can see how long that is, and that's come right off a goose feather, a white one. But the other colored ones are usually dyed. Brown, black, you can get some natural, but most of them are dyed. This white one might even be bleached. Don't know. And of course we're going to need a hook, so I'm going to go ahead and grab a hook here. And I'm going to go with the number 475. This is 3 extra long, 1 extra strong from Lively Legs, and this is going to be a size 12. When you're using, I'm going to put a bead on it. I'm going to use a silver bead. You don't have to put beads on your nymphs. You could just wrap your lead-free wire around the shank of the hook. But the bead seems to be the preferred method of weighting hooks nowadays. And it also gives a little bit of flash in there. So I have a bead. I'm going to just take my hook and get the bead on the hook. And the beads are countersunk. The back has a bigger hole than the front. You want to put your hook point through the bigger hole so that it ends up next to the eye. If you have it backwards, the countersunk might actually cover the eye of your hook. I'm going to go ahead and put this on. I'm going to go ahead and zoom it in. But what I was saying was, when you put a bead on, you want at least a 1 extra long hook, because the bead is going to take up a lot of hook. So this is a 2 extra long. So a normal size hook might be there, a standard might be there, which would, take up a lot of space on the hook. You wouldn't get as much body on there. And I'm going to use black thread. The bead that I have on there is a silver bead. It's a 2.5 millimeter or 2.4 millimeter bead. And the beads, tungsten beads, are heavier. The normal beads, I don't even know if they're available anymore, but pretty much everybody's using tungsten. But if you get the regular beads that are just made of copper or brass or whatever they make this silver one with. Stainless steel chunk probably, or something like that. Or the black metal ones. But anyway, if you do that, you can go ahead and, if you have that, you can go ahead and take some lead wire or lead-free wire. It is a lead wire here. Pennsylvania does not require to use lead-free. And you could go ahead and add weight to it, and that'll give it more weight and help it to get down faster. This particular one, I'm going to start it right about in front of the point there. And I'm going to wrap that pretty close to the bead itself. And again, this is optional, so that's good. And I'm going to push it into the bead. Take that back there. You could either helicopter it off, or with lead itself, it's pretty soft. You can pull it off or use your fingernail on it. Now I'm going to take my thread, and I'm going to start the thread behind the lead wraps, and I'm actually going to push the lead wraps into the bead and secure that there so it doesn't move. The bead's not going to move. And then you could go up the lead wraps once or twice. With this size lead, that was 10 thousandths only. The spaces are pretty skinny. If you get into using lead that's like 25 or 30 thousandths, your thread is definitely going to go in between the lead, and your materials has a chance of doing that also. Okay, so I'm going to stop the thread just inside the point of the hook. Talked about that the other day, that in a lot of the books, especially the older ones, it tells you to come down, take the thread to where it would hang at the barb, which would put that way back there, and I'm already going down the bend there. And most of the older books, especially, they are using mustad hooks, and they were a little bit different shaped, so taking it to the barb would still be on the flat. So now I'm going to take my brown goose biots, and I bend them. Just bend them like this, and get two of them open. Oop, there it goes. And I usually take my fingers here. I use 3 fingers, a thumb, index finger, and middle finger, and pull those all off at the same time. And you can see there's no great amount of excess there. I'm going to put one down on the table. I'm going to take this one, and we want our tail to be maybe about half the length of the hook shank. But if you notice, I'm going to tie it in. I'm going to tie this to my side, and that natural curve I'm going to use. So I want it about half the length. I'm going to make it a little bit longer just to get this, there we go, just to keep that goose biot inside the bead. That way I won't have to grab for my scissors to cut that off. Now with the second one, you can just grab it, and then you could measure it to this side, measure it to the butt side, and since you pull them both off together, they're the same length, and matching up the butts is going to give you the same length in the back. So we'll wrap that down, and I'm going to, now that I got it secured, I'm going to quickly move it up front and quickly move it back. Now, as you can see, I didn't have to trim except for that thing there, and what I'm going to do for that is just hit it with the lighter. That'll get wrapped in. Now the next thing we're going to put on is the rib. This is 16/18, and actually this was a, what was it, a size 12 hook. But I don't like with my Prince nymphs, I like to have small amount of wire. If you used a number 12 wire, because it's a tinsel, if you use a number 12 tinsel on a size 12 hook, you would be blocking a very lot of the Peacock Herl. So I'm just going to take one wrap of the tinsel off the spool, because I'm only planning on tying this one right now. And you know, they all have that little razor cut in there so you could put them back in. And now this is gold and silver tinsel. I'm going to tie it in. I want to see the silver side when I'm done. So I'm going to tie it in with the silver side to the shank, or the gold side showing to me. Now, if you take your thread and you spin that counterclockwise, what you just saw was when I went to spin it, the thread was going off to the front. If you go ahead and spin it counterclockwise, then your thread is going to actually go towards the rear. And we're going to tie that in. That's not quite long enough to go in my material clip. Just a few wraps. Now we're going to take our Peacock Herl, and we're just going to take two. Whether you get it off a Peacock eye, I pulled them all off of this eye already, but when you get to the eye itself, they're not good. There's not a lot of Herl on there, if you want to say. But the Peacock eye are good for stripping and making quill bodies. They have distinct two-color when you wrap them. I'm going to grab a couple of them that have pretty heavy quill on them, or pretty heavy barbels on them. Yeah, I'm just going to stick that back in my bag there. Now I'm going to take my Peacock Herl, and I basically line up the bottoms, but line up the butt sections. And when I get to I'm going to tie it in by the tip, but before I tie it in, you can see they're not even. So I'm going to snip a little bit, and this does two things. It evens them out, plus it takes away that fragile, possibly brittle end. So we're going to go ahead and tie this in, and your tag could go all the way to the bead if you want, but it's not real important on this. I'm going to go ahead and tie that in. Give it 3 or 4 wraps, and then go ahead and move that thread up to your bead. Now before we wrap our Peacock Herl, we're going to take our head cement. I'm going to clean my brush off pretty good. Although we have the rib that's going to keep that Peacock Herl safe, it's always a good idea to put a little bit of head cement on the body anyway. Now we'll take these both at the same time, and we're going to wrap these. You want it tight, but don't pull hard, especially on the beginning, until it gets wrapped several times, because you may have some brittle material there still. And I came apart. It'll go back together. And you could do this by hand, and this is really easy. I mean, I didn't always have a rotary vise, so I kind of learned how to do this quicker, which they split there again. Kind of learned how to do it quicker using my fingers rather than rotating. Now we're just going to keep going through. I'm going to take that right up to the front. I'm going to go ahead and put my hackle pliers on there because I'm running out. And we'll line that right up there. And if you don't get all the way to the bead or to the front, it's okay. If you end up in the middle, obviously you're going to have to put on more. But we're going to put the Hackle in there, and we're also going to put the Goose Biots in there. So having the Herl butt up to the bead itself is not, if you're a couple eye lengths away, not a problem. See how I moved that back? Move that back to about an eye length behind the bead. Now we're going to take our floss, or not our floss, but our tinsel, and I'm going to counter wrap this. And as I wrap it, I'm going to hold it pretty tight. You're going to see the silver side. Although when I tied it in, I tied the silver to the shank. And you can see I got a pretty decent amount of Herl showing in my fly. If you use Hackle pliers on your tinsel, be careful that you don't twist it. I'm going to bring that right up to the bead, let that hang there, and tie that off. Go ahead and take my poke and snip, push that thread out of the way with your finger, and cut that off. Now for the hackle, I'm going to take a ginger grizzly hackle, and I'm going to give that the crew cut. Go ahead and come at it this direction, and you get it nice and close. And now with the crew cut, you can see there's little stubbles there, and that will help to hold, that will help the thread to hold it, so that when you go to wrap it, it's not going to pull out on you. And we're just going to go ahead and give this a few wraps. Oop, let me get that up there closer a little bit. I kind of went back with it. Yeah, just about 3 is good. That hackle, that throat, really depends on you if you like a little bit more or a little bit less. And we'll tie that off. Take my poke and snip and get rid of that hackle stem. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull all of the hackles to the rear. And I'm going to come back on them just 1 or 2 thread widths, and that'll send them towards the rear. Now on this particular one, you see I got a big space between the bead and the hackle. That's not going to be a problem. I could just get a little bit of black dubbing at the end and cover that. But now I'm going to take my white goose biot, and again I'm going to fold it. Use my thumb, index, and middle finger. Thumb, index, middle finger, and pull them off. And now again I'm going to use that natural curve and lay them on top. And I want this biot, the wing, to go right to the end of the body. When you tie these on, you're going to go this direction. I'm going from the top to the far side. And when you get them both tied on, you should be looking at an X pattern with those biots. 1, 2, 3. Where'd that other one go? Yeah, how about that? I just put it down. There it is. And now I'm going to go from the far side to my side with this one. And now you should be looking at an X pattern like that. Now since I have a space there, first thing what I'm going to do is I got a couple barbels sticking up. Just trim them off. Now since I have that space there, I'm going to take these, I'm going to hold those biots in place, and I'm going to wrap forward almost up to the bead or even to the bead. And this is going to ensure that they're secured. I'm going to take my scissors, just fold them up. Whoop. Trim them off. And now, like I said, with that front there. That looks like the dog's breakfast right now. But what I'm going to do, and this is, I do this on most of my Prince nymphs, is I'm going to take a little bit of my Black Rabbit Krystal dub, and I'm going to put a little bit of a head there, if you will. This Black Rabbit Krystal dub looks, it's pretty close to the actual Peacock Herl. Might be a little darker, but with the Krystal dub in there, or the GSS in there, it gives it a nice bring that right to the front. Now I'm going to take my whip finish. Let me put that one out. I'm going to take my whip finish, put it over the thread, go around the camel hump. Then you're going to flip this up, and there's, you got that X there. Take that X down, and then just turn it. 1, 2, 3, as many times as you'd like. 3 to 5 or 6 is good. Tug that in there, and you'll usually feel that set. Take your poke and snip once again. Now the last thing we're going to do is we're going to take our head cement and we're going to put it right on there. I cleaned it pretty good, but I want to put a generous amount right on top because I want that to go down and get onto the white Biots. You can actually put some head cement on before you go ahead and put any dubbing on the front, if you need dubbing on the front. And a lot of the patterns with the prints too actually shows using brown thread and having a brown spot on up front there and just leaving that thread exposed. I think it's much better tying it in this fashion. And here we have a bead head Prince, traditional. Hope that you learned something from this video. Hope that you would subscribe to my channel. Please refer me to your friends. Please visit my sponsors. Let them know that I sent you. Leave comments, questions, suggestions. If you'd like to purchase this or any flies that I tie, go to etsy.com/shop/theflymanjim. And if you don't see it, just send me a message and we'll figure it out. And most of all, thank you very much for watching my videos.